2.5. Choosing your pilot idea. Right now you might be panicking. It feels like you're planning to write 10 episodes of a show that doesn't even exist yet. You've got all these ideas swirling around, but you've not actually written any of the script yet. You're feeling a pressing need to start writing the pilot script. If that's true, at least you're not terrified of writing the pilot script, which is where you might have been before. The plotting of multiple episodes really is worth the bother because you have to check the idea you're proposing as a sitcom is sound and sustainable for at least 12 episodes. A number of times people have talked about their sitcom ideas, and as they explained it, it sounds like all setup, first act, and then all resolution, third act, and no second act. That's not a sitcom. That's a movie, or a novel. Sitcoms are second acts, dozens of second acts. You're not setting up the characters each week, nor are you resolving their stories and fundamentally changing the characters. Your sitcom pilot is the first episode, and it contains the first act of your show. The only question is how long you want the setup to last. There are a number of schools of thought on this whole issue about how set-up-y the pilot episode should be. So let's briefly look at the options available for the set-up-iness, expositionality, of your pilot episode. The whole episode setup. A character wakes up one morning and decides he's going to do something different. He's going to move to the country. She's going to quit and start her own business. They've lost everything and have volunteered to be the first settlers on the moon. Or in the case of The Good Life, for example, you turn 40 and wonder if you're just a cog in a machine. Into the manor born, Audrey Forbes Hamilton attends her husband's funeral and loses her enormous house. Back in the day, the BBC used to confidently churn out big sitcoms, often committing to 8 episodes or more in the first series, so maybe they felt they could take their time setting up. Clearly, The Good Life and To the Manor Born have very watchable first episodes, but they are very set-up-y. My instinct is that writers, especially inexperienced ones, can easily get hung up on this kind of pilot. They often worry about building the world and setting up the characters, but I'm not sure you have time for that these days. You're under quite a lot of pressure to get on with it. And that may be no bad thing. There are many dangers of a pilot episode that is strong on setup. You may well be establishing characters and settings that we never see again. If you're a studio show, there might be lots of location shooting. Not ideal. Plus you're creating an episode which is going to be unlike all future episodes. I would suggest 2 alternatives. The quick setup. In this kind of pilot, you set up the premise fairly quickly, maybe in the first third of the episode, and then spend the rest of the episode on a regular but mini episode. The best example of this I can think of is My Name is Earl, in which Earl J. Hickey, a small-time thief, wins $100,000 on a lottery ticket and is immediately hit by a car 4 minutes in and watches the ticket blow away. In hospital, Earl's wife Joy divorces him, and Earl hears about a concept of karma via TV 6 minutes in. He resolves to try and make up for all the bad things he's done and writes a list of 259 items 7 minutes in. At 7 minutes 25, his life quest is clearly stated. That karma stuff is clearly going to kill me unless I make up for everything on that list. 30 seconds later, he picks one easy one off the list. Number 64, picked on Kenny James. Earl figures he needs to help Kenny to have friends. And we're off. We've now got a 16-minute mini-episode, which will be a taste of the series to come. Brilliant. It hooked me and I watched every single episode, including the lousy prison ones. The other option is the newcomer. Someone arrives who changes everything, or at least acts as a window on the world. This is quite useful, in that you can explain stuff to the newbie as Fletcher does to Godber in Porridge. Fletcher's been transferred from another prison, and Godber is new to the whole thing. It's quite a common trick and can work well. In Ever-Decreasing Circles, Martin Bryce walks in and Paul is in his kitchen. Nothing will be the same again. In The Vicar of Dibley, a new vicar arrives in Dibley, and it's a woman, shock horror. In Miranda, Gary has returned. In Bluestone 4-2, a new padre has arrived, and an American guy is shot in the head. In Hut 33, the Oxford professor arrives. You can combine the quick setup and the newcomer. For example, in Yes Minister, Jim Hacker, the new minister, has arrived at the Department of Administrative Affairs, and an episode plays out that beautifully sets the tone for the series. What's left? A couple more pilot options for those feeling brave. The opening titles. Every week the opening titles play, and you can make them work really hard for you. In fact, you can pack your entire show's premise into the opening titles and forget pilots altogether. In 15 seconds you have all you need to know about the main character and situation of Veep. Graphs and headlines show that she ran for president, but didn't make it, so she's vice president. The audience is smart enough to fill in the gaps, suspecting that it's a bit of a non-job. Apart from that, there's very little setup in the show. Another example of this is The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's all in the opening theme, rapped by the hero, Will Smith. However you set up your premise in the pilot, reminding your audience of the headline idea week after week isn't a bad idea, even though the first episode of Arrested Development sets up the demise of the Bluth family and how Michael ends up taking charge. It doesn't hurt to remind people of this each week. My Name is Earl has a similar premise recap, as does Porridge. The show title. Who needs explanation, setup and backstory when the title of the show says it all? My Family. It's a family, job done. Keeping up appearances, dinner ladies, men behaving badly. The central idea and theme is clear from the name of the show. The rest is detail. A wiser and more experienced man than me, Paul Mayhew Archer in fact, says that if you want to know how to set up a sitcom, watch the first episode of Cheers. That's good advice. Watch that. In fact, watch as many first episodes as you can. Shows you loved, shows you hated. Sometimes the first episode bears little relation to the show you remember or came to love or hate. But usually all the key ingredients are there, they just may be a little undercooked. We'll come back to pilots later. In the meantime, let's return to our list of ideas that we should be turning into plots.